sound of footsteps echoed down the cold hallway. The air smelled of antiseptic and loneliness. That was Las Margaritas nursing home, where my days crawled by like prisoners in a time I could no longer distinguish. I'm Carmen, or at least that's what they call me here. Carmen, the lady in room 23. Carmen, the one with memory loss. Carmen, whom no one has visited in 4 decades. I used to dream every night of a little boy. Big dark eyes. A smile that made me feel that, somewhere in the distant past, there was a time when I was happy. But when I woke up, that boy dissolved like smoke, leaving only the feeling that I'd lost something precious. Something I couldn't even name. "It's time for your medication, Mrs. Ortega," said Elena, one of the few nurses who said my name with kindness. She was in her 30s. I often wondered if she resembled me at that age. But how could I know? The mirror showed only an old woman with sad eyes and trembling hands. A stranger. "What day is it, Elena?" "It's Thursday, Mrs. Ortega. May 12th. You always ask." She smiled with practiced patience. That wasn't what I wanted to know. It wasn't the day of the week or the month. It was what day of my life it was. How much time had passed since I lost everything. But how could I explain that when I didn't even know what I'd lost? It was that seemingly ordinary Thursday when something changed. The nursing home was different. The hallways were cleaned with stronger-smelling products. Flowers were placed in the empty vases. They combed the hair of the elderly residents, usually left forgotten in their wheelchairs. An important visitor was arriving. "He's a millionaire," Elena whispered as she fixed my gray hair. "They say he's going to make a large donation to the home. That's why they're sprucing everything up. A millionaire. What would someone like that be doing in a place like this, where people were deposited to be forgotten? No one comes to a nursing home unless they have an obligation or guilt. I knew that, perhaps from personal experience, though I couldn't say for sure. At noon, the activity in the hallway increased. Nervous voices, hurried footsteps. From my room window, I saw a shiny black car pull up to the entrance. A tall man got out, dressed in an impeccable suit. Even from a distance, there was something about him that caused a strange tightness in my chest. Something familiar, as if he'd stepped out of one of my confused dreams. The nursing home director, Mrs. Amelia, greeted the man with exaggerated smiles and broad gestures. She never smiled like that at us. I watched as they entered the building, and something inside me, something dormant for a long time, began to stir. An hour later, whispers filled the hallways. The millionaire was visiting the rooms, meeting the residents, one by one, speaking to each forgotten elder as if they mattered. What a strange man, I thought. What kind of rich person cares about abandoned old people? When he reached my room, I was sitting by the window, as I always did in the afternoons. The sunlight cast shadows on my face, which I knew was marked by time. "This is Mrs. Carmen Ortega," Mrs. Amelia introduced. "She's been with us longer than any other resident. 40 years. 40 years. The number hit me like a physical blow. 40 years of erased memories, of identical days, of an emptiness I couldn't fill. The man entered my room and our eyes met. Something strange happened at that moment. His dark eyes widened slightly, as if he'd seen a ghost, and inside me, a tremor ran through my whole body. What is your full name, ma'am?" he asked, his voice seeming to control an incomprehensible emotion. "Carmen," I replied simply. "Just Carmen. She has severe memory loss," Mrs. Amelia explained, as if I weren't there. "We don't know much about her past. She was brought here by a relative who passed away shortly after. Since then, no one else has visited her." The man approached me, his eyes fixed on mine as if searching for something. He knelt to be at eye level with me, and I saw his face clearly, a face that inexplicably made my heart race. "How old are you, Mrs. Ortega?" he asked gently. "I don't know for sure," I replied honestly. "The doctors say I'm around 80, but to me, it could be 100, considering the emptiness I carry." He swallowed. I saw his hand tremble slightly as he extended it towards me. "My name is Leonardo Ortega," he said. "I'm very honored to meet you. Ortega. The word resonated within me like a distant bell. Ortega. Where did I know that name from? Why did it seem to awaken a dormant fog in my mind? You remind me of someone, I said without thinking. Someone I can't remember. I saw the impact of my words on his face. His eyes shone with something that seemed like hope and fear at the same time. Maybe we met in another life. He tried to smile, but there was a tension in him that didn't match his light words. That night, after Leonardo Ortega left, my dreams were more vivid. The dark-eyed boy ran through a garden full of trees. I called to him, but I couldn't hear the name coming from my lips. He turned, smiled, and his eyes were the same eyes of the man who had visited me. I woke up drenched in sweat, with a name on the tip of my tongue, a name that slipped away every time I tried to catch it. The feeling that something important was about to emerge from the shadows of my mind was so strong that it left me breathless. The next morning, to my surprise, Leonardo Ortega returned, this time without the nursing home entourage. Just him, sitting in the chair across from me. "I hope I'm not bothering you, Mrs. Ortega," he said with a gentleness that seemed genuine. "But I'd like to talk to you a little more." I nodded, feeling that strange familiarity again. "Yesterday, you said I reminded you of someone," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Could you tell me more about that?" I closed my eyes, trying to capture the fragments floating at the edges of my consciousness. "A boy," I finally answered. "I dream of a boy running in a garden. He has your eyes." I saw Leonardo catch his breath. "This garden," he asked, leaning forward. "Was it large, with many fruit trees, perhaps a big house in the background?" The description ignited something in me. Suddenly I could see the garden more clearly. Mango trees, a swing hanging from a thick branch. The house? "Hacienda," I murmured. "A large hacienda." Leonardo's face paled. He took a photograph from his pocket and extended it to me with trembling fingers. Did this garden look like this? I looked at the old photograph. A lush garden, a large colonial-style house, leafy trees, and then, like lightning cutting through the darkness, a fragment of memory emerged. "Hacienda Las Palmas." The words came out as if they had a life of their own. Leonardo covered his mouth with his hand, his eyes moist. "How do you know that name?" His voice was almost a whisper. I don't know," I replied, confused by my own certainty. "I just do." I saw him take a deep breath, as if summoning the courage for something he had rehearsed. "Mrs. Ortega, would you allow me to do a test? It's completely harmless, I promise." I nodded, curious and apprehensive at the same time. Leonardo then pulled another photograph from his pocket. In it, there was a young, beautiful woman, holding a baby in her arms. Her face shone with happiness. "Do you recognize this woman?" I took the photograph with trembling hands. The woman looked directly at the camera, with a smile that radiated love for the baby in her arms. A smile that, somehow, I knew. That's when it happened. Like a dam breaking after decades of holding back the water, a wave of emotion washed over me. They weren't clear memories. They were sensations. The weight of a baby in my arms, the smell of its skin, the feeling of its tiny fingers gripping my finger. Tears began to run down my wrinkled face as I brought the photograph closer. "My baby," I whispered. "This is my baby." The sound that came from Leonardo was like that of a wounded animal, half groan, half sob. When I looked up, I saw that he was crying too. "Mrs. Ortega," he said, his voice choked. "I have reason to believe that you may be my mother." The words hung in the air between us, laden with a weight that could shatter worlds. My mother, this grown man, this millionaire, believed I was his mother. "That's impossible," I replied, although something inside me screamed otherwise. "Your mother must be an important woman, wealthy, not an old woman abandoned in a nursing home." Leonardo took my hands, his eyes pleading for me to understand. "My mother, Carmen Ortega, supposedly died in an accident 40 years ago. At least, that's what I was told. But now I have reason to believe that was a lie. A cruel lie told by someone who wanted to separate us. 40 years. The same time I'd been in this nursing home. The coincidence was too great to ignore. Who? I asked, feeling a growing rage for an enemy I couldn't even remember. Who would do that? Leonardo's face hardened. My Aunt Ramona, my mother's sister, the woman who raised me, making me believe my mother was dead. And I think she was the one who brought you here, to get rid of the only obstacle between her and the Ortega family fortune. Ramona. The name fell on me like a cold stone. Ramona. Suddenly, I could see a face with features similar to mine, but with cold, calculating eyes. A sister. My sister. I had a sister, I murmured, the words emerging from the fog of memory. Younger. She always wanted what was mine. Leonardo squeezed my hands tighter. I'm going to uncover the truth, Mrs. Ortega. And if you are who I think you are, I'm going to right the injustice that was committed. I promise. When he left that day, I sat for hours, staring into space. However, the emptiness now had a name. It had a form. The boy from my dreams now had a grown-up face. And I, for the first time in 40 years, had a purpose. To remember who I was. To remember what they had done to me. That night, as the moon cast shadows in my simple room, I whispered to the darkness, my name is Carmen Ortega, and I have a son named Leonardo. It was the first time in 40 years that I had spoken a last name, and with it, the first piece of the puzzle of my life fell into place. The following morning dawned differently. I was still in the same sterile nursing home room, the same worn plastic chair by the window, the same routine of colorful pills with watery breakfast. But something had shifted inside me. Tiny fragments of my past began to surface like bubbles rising from a deep lake. Ortega, it was my surname. Each time I repeated it mentally, a door seemed to crack open in my mind. Carmen Ortega. Not just Carmen, the woman in room 23, but Carmen Ortega, a woman with a history, a family, an identity. Elena, the nurse, noticed the change as soon as she entered the room. You're different today, Mrs. Ortega. Your eyes are alive. I remembered something. Elena? I said with a conviction that surprised even me. I remembered my last name. Her eyes widened, surprised by my unusual clarity. What is it? Ortega. Carmen Ortega. Elena smiled, placing the coffee tray on the bedside table. A beautiful name. It suits you. And it matches the name of the man who visited me yesterday. Leonardo Ortega. He could be? I paused, unsure of sharing such an extraordinary idea. Was it the delusion of a confused old woman to believe that a rich and powerful man could be her long-lost son? Maybe it was just my mind desperately searching for connections, creating them where none existed. Elena seemed to read my thoughts. Mr. Ortega came specifically to see you yesterday. He didn't visit anyone else afterward, and he requested your complete medical history. The director was very impressed with his interest in you. My medical history. What was he looking for? Proof? Confirmation? He said he'd be back today, Elena continued, adjusting my blanket. That's why I thought it would be best to get you especially ready today. We'll put on that blue dress they brought for Christmas, the one you never wanted to wear. As Elena helped me into the dress, I discovered my hands were trembling. Not from the Parkinson's the doctors said I had, but from anxiety. For the first time in decades, I cared about my appearance. I wanted to look like a mother, not a shadow. The blue dress hung loosely on my thin frame. Elena brushed my gray hair and even applied a touch of lipstick to my chapped lips. Ready, she said, satisfied. You look beautiful, Mrs. Ortega. In the mirror, I saw a well-dressed old woman, but still an old woman. The years had taken their toll. Could Leonardo see beyond the wrinkles and cloudy eyes? Would there be any trace of his young mother still visible in this aged shell? Waiting for Leonardo that day was torture. Each minute crawled by like an hour. I sat by the window as I always did, but this time I wasn't gazing idly at the garden. My eyes were fixed on the gate, waiting for the shiny black car. It arrived in the early afternoon. From my window, I saw him park and get out. He wasn't alone. An elegant woman accompanied him, formally dressed, carrying a briefcase. She looked like a lawyer or a doctor. 15 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. Leonardo entered with a warm smile, followed by the professionally composed woman. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Ortega," he greeted, his eyes taking in my blue dress with approval. "You look lovely today." "I tried to get ready," I replied simply. I didn't want to look like a frumpy old woman for my important visitor. He smiled wider and turned to the woman. "This is Dr. Lucia Mendez. She's a neurologist specializing in memory loss and trauma. With your permission, I'd like her to speak with you for a while." I nodded, though I felt a tightness in my chest. Tests, examinations, evidence. Was that what I had become now? A mystery to be solved? Dr. Mendez approached with a kind smile. "Mrs. Ortega, Mr. Ortega told me about your encounters. I'm here simply to help understand what might be happening with your memories. It's nothing invasive, just a conversation. Is that all right with you?" "Yes," I replied, straightening in my chair. "Ask me anything, doctor. I want answers myself." For the next hour, the neurologist asked about my recurring dreams, about the sensations certain words or images evoked in me, about the few fragments of memory I could access. Leonardo sat silently, observing my every response intently. "It's fascinating," Dr. Mendez finally said. "Mrs. Ortega seems to have a specific type of dissociative amnesia, likely triggered by severe trauma. The memories weren't completely erased, just strongly suppressed. With the right stimuli, like the encounter with Mr. Ortega, they begin to emerge. So is there a possibility she'll recover all her memories?" Leonardo asked, leaning forward with visible anxiety. "It's possible, yes, but the process can be slow and painful, and it's never complete. There will always be gaps, especially considering the time that's passed." I observed Leonardo's face, seeing the struggle between hope and frustration. He wanted his mother back, whole, with all her memories and stories. But I was broken, incomplete, a puzzle with pieces lost forever. "I'd like to try," I said, surprising them both. "I want to remember, even if it's painful, even if it's incomplete. I need to know who I am." Dr. Mendez nodded, understanding. "We can start with memory recovery therapy, but I must warn you, when traumatic memories return, they can bring intense emotions with them. Are you prepared for that?" Was I? After 40 years of emotional emptiness, would I be ready to confront the pain that had driven me to this state? I looked at Leonardo, into eyes that so resembled those of the child in my dreams. "Yes," I replied firmly. "I am." After Dr. Mendez left to make arrangements with the nursing home administration, Leonardo sat beside me. His expression had changed. It was more somber. "I have information to share with you," he said, his voice low and tense. "Information about Ramona Ortega, about what I believe she did." The name made my stomach clench. Ramona, my sister, the cold-eyed girl who grew up in the same house as me. The fragments were starting to come together, forming a picture still incomplete, but already disturbing. "Tell me," I asked, bracing myself for the truth, whatever it might be. Leonardo took a deep breath. "Ramona raised me after the supposed accident that killed my mother. That may have killed you. She took control of all the Ortega family businesses. We became one of the wealthiest families in the region, but she always kept secrets about the past, always avoided talking about my mother." He paused, carefully choosing his next words. "Recently, I found old documents. Documents showing there was no accident, that my mother was declared mentally unstable after severe postpartum depression, and that she was committed to a psychiatric institution by court order, with Ramona appointed my guardian and administrator of the family fortune." The words hit me like physical blows. Postpartum depression, mental instability, commitment. Fragments of memory began to stir, disconnected images of crying, despair, and a deep darkness that seemed to swallow me whole. "I had depression," I murmured, the words emerging from somewhere deep within. "After you were born, I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't sleep. Ramona said I wasn't capable of being a mother." Leonardo squeezed my hands tightly. "Go on, please. What else do you remember?" I closed my eyes, trying to reach the memories floating at the edges of my consciousness. Doctors. Many doctors. Ramona brought them to see me. They gave me medication that made me dizzy, confused. I wanted to see my baby, but they said it wasn't safe, that I might hurt him. A tear rolled down my cheek. Leonardo gently wiped it away. You would never hurt me. I'm sure of that. What else did you discover in the documents? I asked, feeling the need to know the whole story, no matter how painful. Leonardo hesitated, as if weighing the impact his next words would have on me. I discovered that the institution where my mother was committed closed 35 years ago. All the patients were transferred, and among the transfer records I found a name. Carmen Ortega, transferred to Las Margaritas nursing home, the nursing home where I was, where I spent 40 years without identity, without a past, without family. She brought me here and abandoned me, I said, the realization hitting me like a lightning bolt. My own sister. She didn't just abandon you, Leonardo continued, his voice now trembling with barely contained rage. She declared you dead. There's a death certificate signed by a doctor who, conveniently, also died decades ago. With that document, she assumed complete control of the Ortega fortune and raised me believing my mother had died in a tragic accident. The magnitude of the betrayal was so great, it left me breathless. How could anyone do that? How could my own sister steal my life, my son, my identity? Where is she now? Ramona? I asked, feeling a rage I didn't know I was still capable of. At our family home, Hacienda Las Palmas. She still manages part of the business, though I've taken control of most of the companies in recent years. Does she know you're here? That you found me? Leonardo shook his head. No, and I intend to keep it that way for now. I'm gathering evidence before confronting her. I want to be absolutely certain. What kind of evidence do you need? DNA would be the most conclusive. Doctor, Mendez already collected samples from me, and with your permission, I'd like to collect from you as well. Also, I'm looking for old records from the psychiatric hospital, family photographs that can verify your identity, and witnesses who knew Carmen Ortega before her supposed accident. The mention of witnesses ignited something in me. Faces began to emerge in my mind. Hacienda employees, friends, and one face in particular, a face that made my heart quicken. Guillermo. The name escaped my lips before I could think. Leonardo froze. Who is Guillermo? I closed my eyes, trying to capture the fleeting image. A man. Important. He used to visit me at the hacienda. Visit how? Was he a family friend? I shook my head, confused by the conflicting memories. No, he came secretly. We met in the garden, far from the house. He brought me flowers. Leonardo paled. Are you describing a lover? The word awakened a wave of emotions. Warmth, shame, desire, guilt. Yes, Guillermo had been my lover. In disconnected flashes, I remembered secret encounters, stolen kisses, whispered promises under the hacienda trees. Yes, I admitted. I think so. Leonardo seemed to process that information with difficulty. What was his last name? Do you remember? I strained my memory, but the fog was too thick. I can't remember. Just Guillermo. When was that? Before or after my birth? The question sparked a sudden and disturbing understanding. The dates, the secret encounters, Ramona's furious reaction when she discovered before, during, and after. I replied slowly. Guillermo and I met before my marriage. We continued seeing each other afterward, even after I was married. I saw the impact of my words on Leonardo's face. He hadn't considered that possibility, that his mother might have had an extramarital affair, that his official father might not be his biological father. My father, he said hoarsely. My father was Eduardo Ortega. At least that's what my birth certificate says. He died in the same accident that supposedly killed my mother. Do you remember him? Eduardo Ortega. The name evoked the image of a tall, distant man, always busy with business and frequent trips. A marriage arranged for convenience, for money, for status. A husband I respected, but didn't love. Yes, I replied. Eduardo was a good man, but our marriage wasn't based on love. It was arranged by our families. Leonardo seemed to be piecing together the puzzle in his mind, and the picture emerging was visibly shocking him. Are you suggesting that Guillermo could be my biological father, not Eduardo Ortega? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. If it were true, not only was Leonardo's mother alive, but his real father could be another man. His entire identity, his entire family legacy, would be in question. I'm not sure, I replied honestly. My memories are fragments. I can't say for certain, but it's possible. Leonardo stood up abruptly and walked to the window. I saw his shoulders tense, his hand running through his hair in a gesture of agitation. That would explain a lot of things, he murmured, more to himself than to me. Ramona's doubts about my legitimacy, her determination to keep me away from any information about my mother, the way she always insisted that I was a true Ortega, when no one had ever questioned that. His voice trembled slightly. His whole life, his whole identity was being questioned because of my fragmented memories, my incomplete confessions. I'm sorry, I said, feeling the weight of guilt. I shouldn't have mentioned Guillermo, not when everything is still so uncertain. Leonardo turned to me, his eyes shining with determination through the unshed tears. No, Mrs. Ortega, you did exactly what you should have. If we're looking for the truth, we need to face it completely, no matter how painful. He sat down beside me again, holding my wrinkled hands in his. I'm going to find Guillermo, if he's still alive. I'm going to find out who he is, what his relationship was with my mother, with you, and if he's my biological father. I need to know that too. And if it's true, I asked softly, if Guillermo is your father, and not Eduardo Ortega, what does that mean to you? Leonardo was silent for a moment, considering the question. When he answered, his voice was firm. It means that Ramona not only stole my mother from me, but also my true identity. It means I lived my whole life believing a lie. I built an empire under the Ortega name, when maybe I'm not even an Ortega by blood. Would that change who you are? I asked, genuinely curious. He smiled sadly. No, I am who I am because of the choices I've made, not the blood that runs in my veins. But it would mean I have the right to know my true history. And you, Mrs. Ortega, you have the right to reclaim your life. At that moment, I felt a deep connection with this man who could be my son. Whether he was the product of my marriage to Eduardo or my love for Guillermo, he had been born from my womb. I had carried him, and for 40 years, we were separated by a cruel lie. Leonardo, I said, feeling the name strange and familiar at the same time on my lips. I want to leave this place. I want to go with you. I want to confront Ramona and demand the years she stole from us. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the concern for my frail health, for my unstable mental state, for the impact a confrontation might have. Not yet, he said gently. We need to be sure, and you need to be stronger, both physically and emotionally. Dr. Mendez will start treatment to help with your memories. In the meantime, I'll investigate Guillermo and gather all the possible evidence against Ramona. He was right, of course. I was just a frail old woman with fragmented memories. What judge would believe me against Ramona Ortega, a powerful and respected woman? We needed concrete, irrefutable evidence. How long? I asked, feeling the weight of the 40 years already lost. A few weeks, maybe. No more than that. I promise. When Leonardo left that day, he carried with him samples for the DNA test and the beginning of a hope I hadn't dared to feel in decades. The idea that maybe, just maybe, I could recover something of what I had lost. In the following weeks, my life in the nursing home changed completely. Dr. Mendez came 3 times a week for memory recovery therapy sessions. Leonardo appeared almost daily, bringing old photographs, objects from Hacienda Las Palmas, recordings of music from the era, all to stimulate my dormant memories. And it worked. Gradually, like a puzzle being assembled, My past began to take shape. I remembered my childhood on my parents' estate. Ramona, my younger sister, always watching me with barely concealed envy. My arranged marriage to Eduardo Ortega, a rich and respectable man, but distant and cold. And I remembered Guillermo Santa Cruz, the son of one of the workers on the neighboring estate, the boy with dark eyes and an easy smile, who had stolen my heart in my adolescence, the man I continued to love secretly, even after marrying Eduardo. "We were so young," I told Leonardo during one of his visits. "Our parents forbade the romance. He wasn't of our social standing, they said. Then they married me off to Eduardo. A good match, a man from a respected family. But I never managed to forget Guillermo." "And you continued to see each other after your marriage?" Leonardo asked without judgment in his voice. "Yes, secret encounters, always afraid of being discovered. Eduardo traveled a lot for business. During those times, Guillermo would come to the hacienda. We met in the garden, far from the main house. And Ramona discovered you." I closed my eyes, the painful memory emerging clear as crystal. "Yes, she surprised us one night. It was a few months after your birth. I was still fragile from postpartum depression. Guillermo came to see me, worried about my state. We embraced and Ramona saw. What did she do? She threatened to tell Eduardo everything. She said he would take you away from me, that I would be cast out of the family, penniless, publicly disgraced. I panicked. The idea of losing you, my baby, it was too much. I had a nervous breakdown. Tears streamed down my face as the painful memories unfolded. Ramona used my collapse to convince Eduardo that I was unstable, dangerous, incapable of caring for a baby. She brought in doctors who gave me medication that made me dizzy, confused. Every time I mentioned Guillermo, it was proof of my madness. I ended up committed to a psychiatric clinic. Leonardo held my hands, his eyes full of compassion. "And my father, Eduardo, did he allow this?" The image of Eduardo surfaced in my mind, his worried, confused face, manipulated by Ramona. Eduardo wasn't a cruel man, just weak. He believed what Ramona and the doctors said, that I needed treatment, that it was for my own good. Maybe he also suspected about Guillermo and you. Maybe it was easier to get rid of me than to face the possibility that his only son wasn't his. And the accident that supposedly killed you both? That was later. I'd already been committed for months. One day Ramona visited me. She said Eduardo had died in a car accident, that you were in her care now, that it would be better for everyone if I simply disappeared. "But there was no accident," Leonardo said, the anger evident in his voice. "Eduardo died of a heart attack 2 years after your commitment. I have the original death certificate. Ramona forged the story of the accident." That revelation hit me like a physical blow. Another lie, another manipulation. "After that," I continued, the memories flowing more freely now, "I was transferred to this nursing home. They said it was a more suitable environment for my condition. Here, without the heavy medication from the psychiatric clinic, I began to improve mentally. But the memories were too painful. Maybe I chose to forget them myself, to forget you, to forget everything. And Guillermo, do you know what happened to him?" I shook my head. "I never saw him again after my commitment. I don't know if he tried to find me, if Ramona kept him away, or if he simply moved on with his life." Leonardo took a deep breath, processing everything he had heard. "The DNA test confirmed it, Mrs. Ortega. You are, without a doubt, my biological mother. Even expecting that confirmation, the news hit me hard. It was real. This strong, kind man in front of me was my son, my baby, whom I had been forced to abandon. I found Guillermo Santa Cruz," Leonardo continued, watching my reaction closely. "He's alive. He lives on a small farm a few hours from here. He retired as a manager of an agricultural company." My heart quickened. Guillermo, alive after so many years. Does he know about me? About you?" "I haven't told him everything yet. I only said I was researching my family history. He received me well. We talked for hours. He never married Mrs. Ortega. He said there was only one love in his life, and that he lost her many years ago. Tears blurred my vision. Guillermo still remembered me, still loved me, even after 4 decades. He agreed to take a DNA test, Leonardo added. The results are coming next week. And if he's your father? Leonardo smiled sadly. Then I'll have 2 fathers. Eduardo Ortega, who raised me as best he could, and Guillermo Santa Cruz, who gave me life without knowing it. And I'll have to accept that my whole existence was built on lies told by Ramona. Have you confronted her? Not yet. I'm waiting for all the evidence. The results of the DNA test with Guillermo, the original hospital documents, proof of the forgery of the accident and the death certificate. When I confront her, I want there to be no possibility of denial. That night after Leonardo left, I sat by the window as I always did. But this time, I wasn't staring into emptiness. I was looking at the stars, thinking of Guillermo, of Leonardo, of the paths our lives had taken, all shaped by Ramona's cruel manipulations. And for the first time in 40 years, I allowed myself to feel something beyond the apathetic resignation that had become my constant companion. I allowed myself to feel anger, a deep and righteous anger for everything they had stolen from me, from us. That night I fell asleep with a new purpose. I was no longer just Carmen, the forgotten woman in room 23. I was Carmen Ortega, and I was about to reclaim my life. The news arrived on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after my first meeting with Leonardo. I was in therapy with Dr. Mendez when he burst into the room, his face alight with a mixture of emotions, triumph, shock, determination. The results are in, he announced, waving an envelope. The DNA confirms it. Guillermo Santa Cruz is my biological father. Dr. Mendez, sensing the intensity of the moment, discreetly left us alone. When the door closed, Leonardo slumped into the chair opposite me, his hands trembling as he held the document. My whole life, he murmured. My whole identity, based on a lie. I reached out, touching his face with trembling fingers. Not entirely a lie, I said softly. You're my son. That was never a lie. He held my hand to his face, closing his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, I saw a new resolve. I'm confronting Ramona today. I have all the necessary proof. The hospital documents, the DNA results, the forgeries she used to declare her death. There's no way she can deny it. A chill ran down my spine. Ramona, my sister, the architect of this tragedy. After 40 years, she would finally be confronted with her lies. I want to go with you, I said, surprising us both. Leonardo frowned, worried. I don't think that's a good idea. Ramona is manipulative, cruel. The shock of seeing you could trigger an unpredictable reaction. I need to be there, I insisted, feeling a strength I didn't know I possessed. Not just as living proof of her lies, but for myself. I need to look her in the eye, Leonardo. I need to understand why my own sister did this to me. He hesitated, assessing my determination. Are you strong enough for this? Physically? Emotionally? It was a valid question. I was an 80-year-old woman, frail after decades of institutionalization. But inside me, a fire had been ignited. The fire of justice, of truth, of retribution. I'm stronger than I look, I replied. And even if I weren't, some things are worth the risk. After a conversation with Dr. Mendez and the nursing home administrator, arrangements were made. I would be released for a day under Leonardo's responsibility. They dressed me in new clothes, a simple but elegant dress, comfortable shoes. Elena, the nurse, fixed my hair and even applied a touch of lipstick. You look beautiful, she said, her eyes shining with emotion. You're going to show that woman she didn't destroy you, despite everything. Leonardo's car was spacious and comfortable. On the drive to the Las Palmas estate, I watched the landscape through the window with eyes that seemed to see the world for the first time. So much had changed in 40 years. Buildings where there had once been fields, highways where there had once been dirt roads, a transformed world, while I remained unchanged within the nursing home walls. "We're here," Leonardo finally announced as the car passed through a large iron gate. The Las Palmas estate loomed before us, a 2-story colonial mansion with wide balconies and lush gardens. My heart quickened as I recognized the place. This had been my home. Here I had been happy, had suffered, had loved. "The mango trees," I murmured, pointing to the orchard beside the house. "They're bigger." Leonardo parked in front of the main entrance. Before getting out of the car, he turned to me. "Are you sure about this? We can still turn back." I took a deep breath, gathering all my courage. I'm not going back to that nursing home without confronting Ramona. No matter what happens today, I can't continue living like a shadow. I need to reclaim who I am. He nodded, respecting my decision. "Ramona doesn't know we're coming. She thinks I'm on a business trip. The element of surprise is on our side." As we got out of the car, a maid came to greet us at the door. Her curious gaze fell on me, the strange elderly woman accompanying the patron. "Mr. Leonardo, what a surprise. Mrs. Ramona is in the library." "Thank you, Marta. Don't announce our arrival. We want to surprise her." Marta nodded and walked away, giving me another intrigued look. Leonardo offered me his arm for support, and we entered the house. The interior of the hacienda was exactly as I remembered it, and at the same time completely different. The same dark hardwood floors, the same elegant arches separating the rooms, but the decor had changed. Where there had once been vibrant, welcoming colors, now cold, austere tones predominated. The home I had created had been transformed into Ramona's kingdom. We walked slowly down the main hallway, passing family photographs on the walls. Leonardo at different ages, child, teenager, adult. Ramona, aging with studied elegance, and an old photograph, preserved as a relic. Eduardo Ortega, stiff and formal in his suit, beside a young woman I recognized as myself, decades ago. "She kept pictures of you," Leonardo observed, surprised. "To maintain the lie," I replied bitterly. "The tragic story of the sister who died young, leaving a son for her to raise." Finally, we reached the library door. Leonardo knocked lightly and, without waiting for a response, opened the door. Ramona Ortega was sitting behind a large mahogany desk, concentrating on some papers. In her 70s, she remained elegant and imposing. Perfectly coiffed gray hair, upright posture, understated but expensive jewelry. When she looked up and saw Leonardo, a smile began to form on her lips. A smile that froze when she saw me beside him. For an instant, a brief instant that was worth 40 years of suffering, I saw pure terror in Ramona's eyes. Her face paled as if she had seen a ghost. And, in a way, that's exactly what I was. The ghost of the woman she had buried alive. "Leonardo," she finally managed to say, her voice almost unrecognizable. "What does this mean? Who is this woman?" Leonardo closed the library door behind us and stepped forward, keeping me safe beside him. "I think you know exactly who she is, Aunt Ramona. Or should I say, sister-in-law." Ramona slowly rose, her hands gripping the edge of the desk for balance. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, trying to regain her composure. "Is this woman some patient from your new charity project? Why did you bring her here?" "Look at her, Ramona," Leonardo insisted, his voice hard. "Look her in the eyes and tell me you don't recognize her." Ramona finally looked at me directly, her eyes meeting mine. And in that moment, I saw beyond the initial terror. I saw the cold calculation, the strategic mind working, assessing possibilities, planning escapes. "Is this some kind of sick joke, Leonardo? This woman clearly bears some resemblance to your late mother, but—" "My mother isn't dead," Leonardo interrupted, his voice sharp. "She's right here in front of you. Carmen Ortega, whom you declared dead 40 years ago, whom you committed to a nursing home to seize her fortune, her son, her life." Ramona made a sound of theatrical indignation. "This is absurd. Your mother died in the same accident as your father. I saw the bodies. I identified them personally. How dare you bring this imposter to your family home and make such accusations?" "I who had remained silent until then, stepped forward. My voice, when I finally spoke, sounded surprisingly firm. "Look at me, Ramona. Really look. It's me, Carmen, your sister, the woman whose husband you desired, whose fortune you coveted, whose son you stole." Something flickered in Ramona's gaze, a brief moment of recognition, quickly suppressed by the instinct of self-preservation. "This is madness," she said, taking a step back. "Leonardo, this woman is obviously unbalanced. She probably saw pictures of your mother and built this fantasy. We need to call a doctor, maybe the police." "Enough lies." Leonardo slammed his fist on the desk, making Ramona jump. "I have all the proof, Aunt. The original documents of my mother's commitment, the forged death certificate, the transfer records to the Las Margaritas nursing home, where you abandoned her under the name Carmen only. No last name, no identity." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and threw it on the desk. Papers scattered, revealing the irrefutable documents of decades of fraud. "And I have this," he continued, shaking another envelope. "DNA proof confirming that this woman is, without a doubt, my biological mother." Ramona looked at the documents, her face a mask of fury and fear. "You don't understand," she hissed. "Your mother was crazy, dangerous, unstable. She was having an affair, betraying her own husband under this very roof. Edward." "I know about Guillermo Santa Cruz," Leonardo interrupted. "And I also have this." He shook a third envelope. "Another DNA test. Guillermo Santa Cruz is my biological father, not Eduardo Ortega. I know everything, Aunt Ramona. Every lie you told. Every manipulation. Every betrayal." Ramona staggered as if she had received a physical blow. For a moment, I thought she would faint. But then, something changed in her face. The mask of indignation gave way to a cold, calculating expression. The real Ramona. "And what do you intend to do with this evidence?" she asked, her voice now controlled, almost ironic. "Sue me? Expose me publicly? Ruin the family name? Our reputation? Everything I've built for decades?" "That we built," Leonardo corrected. "The Ortega fortune grew under my administration as much as under yours. And yes, I intend to take legal action. You committed serious crimes, Aunt. Fraud, forgery, kidnapping. To begin with." Ramona smiled coldly. "Think carefully, nephew. A scandal of this magnitude would destroy not only me, but you as well. The prestigious Leonardo Ortega, the illegitimate son of an adulteress and a farmhand. Can you imagine what that would do to your business? To the company's stock? To your social standing?" I saw the impact of her words on Leonardo. Ramona knew exactly where to strike. Pride, reputation, the empire he had built. "And look at her," Ramona continued, pointing dismissively at me. "An old, confused, and frail woman. Do you think she would survive a trial? The interrogations, the exposure, the media scrutiny. You would kill her with this effort, after all this time searching for her." I stepped forward, facing my sister directly. "You're doing what you always did, Ramona. Manipulating, using fear, trying to control others for your own benefit. It won't work this time." She looked at me intently, and for the first time I saw pure hatred in her eyes. "You always had everything." Ramona spat. "The beauty, our parents' attention, the advantageous marriage to Eduardo, the hacienda, the fortune, even a passionate lover. And what did I have? Nothing. I was condemned to live in your shadow forever." "So you took it all from me," I replied calmly. "My son, my freedom, my identity, 40 years of my life. I did what had to be done," Ramona retorted without a shadow of regret. "Eduardo deserved a legitimate heir. The Ortega family deserved to preserve its name and honor. You were destroying everything with your scandalous behavior, your mental breakdown, your obsession with that nobody." Leonardo, who had been watching our exchange with a somber expression, finally intervened. "Enough, Ramona. Your justifications don't change what you did. You stole 40 years of my mother's life. You stole my true identity. You built your life on lies and suffering." He approached the desk, gathering the documents and returning them to the folder. "I don't want a public scandal any more than you do. Not for my sake, but for my mother's. She deserves peace after everything she's been through. So I'm going to offer you a deal." Ramona narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "What kind of deal?" "You will transfer half of your assets to my mother. You will buy her a comfortable house, hire the best caregivers, and guarantee that she lives the rest of her days with dignity and comfort. You will admit in a legal document signed and registered everything you did. This document will be kept as collateral. If you violate any part of the agreement, it will be made public." "And what do I get out of this?" Ramona asked, still calculating. "Silence. Preservation of your name, your reputation, avoiding prison, which would be the certain outcome if I took this evidence to the authorities." Ramona pondered for a moment, weighing her options. Finally, with a sigh of defeat, she nodded. "Very well. I accept your terms, but on one condition. She will never return to this house. The Las Palmas Hacienda will remain my residence until my death." Leonardo looked at me, awaiting my response. I looked around the library, at the walls that had once been my home, at the portraits, the furniture, the memories, and I realized I wanted none of it back. This house was steeped in the evil Ramona had done, in the lies she had told. "You can keep the hacienda," I said finally. "There's nothing here for me but ghosts. But you should know, Ramona, that despite everything you did, you didn't destroy me. I'm here. I survived. And now I've recovered what truly matters." I extended my hand to Leonardo, who took it firmly in his. "My son." I saw the pain on Ramona's face as she witnessed that gesture of affection, the pain of someone who, despite all the power and wealth, had never known true love. I felt, surprisingly, a twinge of pity for her. "Why, Ramona?" I asked softly. "At the bottom of it all, why did you do this to me?" For a moment, I saw something crack in my sister's facade of coldness, something vulnerable, almost human. "Because I hated you," she replied, her voice almost a whisper. "I hated you because you had everything I wanted and seemed to value nothing of it. Eduardo loved you, even knowing about your betrayal. His son, or so he thought, was healthy and beautiful. The fortune was in your hands, and you wasted it all on secret encounters with a nobody. So it wasn't just about the inheritance," I concluded. "It was about revenge. It was about justice," Ramona corrected. "From my point of view, at least." Leonardo, weary of the painful confrontation, gently touched my shoulder. "Let's go, Mom. There's nothing more to say here. My lawyers will contact Ramona to formalize the agreement. We don't need to continue witnessing her more subtle forms of manipulation." As we turned to leave, Ramona's voice stopped us. "Leonardo, one moment, please." He turned, reluctant. "What is it, Ramona?" She hesitated, as if struggling with words. You were always like a son to me. Despite everything, despite what you think of me now. I raised you. I loved you. In my own way." I saw the conflict on Leonardo's face, the anger and pain battling against 40 years of a relationship that, despite being based on lies, had been real for him. "Goodbye, Aunt Ramona," he finally said, neither rejecting nor accepting her words. We left the hacienda in silence, each immersed in their own thoughts. In the car, Leonardo held my hand. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I replied sincerely. "Better than I've been in 4 decades." I looked out the window at the hacienda receding behind us. Ramona's kingdom, built on the suffering of others. I felt no anger, no hatred, only a profound relief at finally being free of her. Free from the institution, free from the lies, free from oblivion. "Where are we going now?" I asked, feeling suddenly light, almost young again. Leonardo smiled, a smile that lit up his dark eyes, the same eyes of the boy in my dreams, the same eyes of Guillermo. "Home, Mom. We're going home. Home." The word felt strange after so long institutionalized. What was home to someone who'd spent 4 decades in an identity limbo, in a sterile asylum room. Leonardo lived in a modern mansion on the outskirts of the city, a stark contrast to the colonial hacienda. It was all straight lines, glass and steel, spacious, elegant, yet somehow impersonal, as if he too had lived in a kind of limbo, surrounded by luxury but lacking true roots. "It's temporary," Leonardo explained, sensing my reaction to the house. "Until we find a place that's just yours. Or ours if you'd prefer to stay with me." A room had been prepared for me, large, comfortable, with a hired nurse to assist with my medication and needs. Elena, the asylum nurse who'd become my friend, had been transferred to work exclusively with me, a small familiar comfort amidst so much change. The first few days were filled with adjustments and discoveries, discovering what it was like to bathe in a luxurious tub after decades of quick showers in the asylum, choosing my own clothes from the many Leonardo had bought for me, eating fresh, flavorful food prepared by a chef instead of the bland institutional fare of the asylum. Small luxuries that were, in reality, just basic rights that had been stolen from me. Leonardo worked during the day, managing his business empire, but dedicated every evening to me. We sat on the expansive patio, watching the sunset, and talked. We filled 4 decades of absence with words, stories, memories. He told me about his childhood with Ramona, how she'd been a stern but not cruel aunt, how she'd insisted on the best education, the best social connections, how she'd molded him to be the perfect heir to the Ortega empire. "She never denied me anything material," he explained, "but there was a coldness to her, a distance, as if, while she wanted me to be her son, she also resented that role. I think she always saw in you the son she never had," I reflected, but also a constant reminder that it was I who had given birth to the Ortega heir, not her. Leonardo also shared his professional achievements, how he'd expanded the family business beyond traditional rural holdings, investing in technology, renewable energy, international trade, how he'd transformed the Ortega name into a synonym for success and innovation. "I built all this believing it was my legacy," he said with a hint of bitterness. "The legacy of Eduardo Ortega's son. Now I know I'm Guillermo Santa Cruz's son, a man who worked to survive, not to accumulate wealth." "Your legacy is what you choose it to be," I replied. "Eduardo raised you as his son for 2 years, though they didn't share blood. He loved you. And Guillermo would have been proud of the man you became, I'm sure." The mention of Guillermo always brought a question to Leonardo's eyes, a question he finally verbalized one night as we shared a bottle of wine on the patio. Would he like to see me? Guillermo? My heart quickened at the mere possibility. Guillermo, my forbidden love from my youth, the man whose love had, indirectly, caused my downfall, the father of the son who was taken from me. Does he know about me? That I'm alive? Leonardo shook his head. "I haven't told him yet. I wanted your permission first. It's your story too, after all." I closed my eyes, imagining the reunion. Would Guillermo see beyond the wrinkles, the white hair, the body weakened by time and suffering? Would he recognize in the elderly woman before him the young woman he'd loved? Yes, I finally decided. I want to see him. I need to see him. Even if it's just once. Even if he doesn't want anything to do with me. I need to close this chapter. Leonardo smiled, gently squeezing my hand. He asked about you. You know, when I visited him a second time, after the DNA test, he asked if I knew what had happened to Carmen from Hacienda Las Palmas. He said he tried to find out after the supposed accident, but Ramona kept him away. He said she threatened him, hinted that he could be held responsible for your death if he kept asking questions. Typical of Ramona, I thought, using fear, intimidation, manipulation to keep her world perfectly controlled. When? I asked, feeling a youthful anxiety that didn't match my advanced age. Tomorrow, if you feel up to it. I've already arranged it with him. I just told him I had a very important surprise, something related to the Ortega family. That night, I couldn't sleep. Memories of Guillermo flooded my mind. No longer confused fragments, but clear, vivid memories. His easy smile, his hands calloused from working the farm, the way his eyes lit up when he saw me. Our secret meetings in the hacienda's garden, away from the disapproving gazes of the society that surrounded us. We were so young, so full of impossible dreams. I, the daughter of the rural elite, destined for an advantageous marriage. He, the son of farm workers, with no possessions or social status. Our love had no future in that rigid, class-conscious society. We knew it, but we couldn't stay away from each other. When I was forced to marry Eduardo Ortega, I thought I would die of sadness. Guillermo begged me to run away with him. He proposed a simple life, far from everyone and everything. But I was too cowardly, too attached to social conventions, to material comforts. I chose the safe path, the arranged marriage, the life of a respectable high society wife. And yet, I couldn't forget Guillermo. We continued to meet secretly, years after my marriage. An impossible love that refused to die. When I became pregnant, I wasn't sure who the father was. Eduardo, my husband, traveled frequently for business, but we were together enough for the child to be his. Guillermo and I met rarely, but passionately. The possibility was there. Now, decades later, the DNA test had confirmed it. Leonardo was Guillermo's son, not Eduardo's. The fruit of forbidden love, not of a marriage of convenience. How would Guillermo react to knowing he had a son who was now a mature, powerful, and successful man, a son who had grown up under another man's name, in the wealth that he, Guillermo, could never have provided? And how would he react to seeing me, an 80-year-old woman with eyes clouded by time, skin marked by deep wrinkles? Would anything remain of the young Carmen he had loved? The hours crawled by. When the sun finally rose, I had been awake for a long time, sitting by the window, watching the sky change color. Elena entered the room early, bringing my medication and a warm smile. Doña Carmen, Mr. Leonardo told me about today's meeting. We're going to make you especially beautiful for the occasion. She helped me bathe, washed and styled my hair, and helped me dress in a simple but elegant outfit. A light blue dress that matched my eyes, a pearl necklace, a light touch of makeup to soften the marks of time. In the mirror I saw an older woman, certainly, but one who had regained a dignity that the asylum had stolen from her. There was a sparkle in my eyes, a straighter posture in my shoulders. Hope, expectation, had rejuvenated me, at least spiritually. Leonardo knocked on the door promptly at 10 o'clock. "Are you ready, Mother?" I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Leonardo offered me his arm and we left the house together, heading for the car. "We are not going to his house," Leonardo explained. "I thought a neutral ground would be better. I reserved a private room at a quiet restaurant nearby. It was a kind consideration. A meeting at Guillermo's house or Leonardo's would carry extra weight, implicit expectations. A neutral space would give us the opportunity to simply be." The restaurant was elegant without being ostentatious. The private room overlooked a lush garden, with large windows letting in the morning sunlight. A table was set for 3, with fresh flowers and a bottle of wine already open to breathe. "Guillermo will arrive in 10 minutes, Leonardo informed me, checking his watch. "Would you like me to stay in the room when he arrives, or would you prefer a private moment?" I considered the question carefully. Part of me wanted the security of Leonardo's presence. Another part longed for the intimacy of a reunion without witnesses. "Stay, please," I finally decided. "At least at the beginning. Afterwards, we'll see." Leonardo nodded and helped me sit in a comfortable armchair, facing the door. We chatted about trivialities in the following minutes, both too tense to address the real issue occupying our minds. Then we heard footsteps approaching, a soft knock on the door. Leonardo stood up, briefly squeezing my hand in a gesture of encouragement, and crossed the room to open the door. "Mr. Santa Cruz, thank you for coming," I heard Leonardo say. "Don Leonardo, the pleasure is mine. I confess I was intrigued by your mysterious invitation." The voice. Even after 40 years, I immediately recognized the voice. Deeper, rougher with time, but unmistakably Guillermo's voice. My heart quickened. Leonardo entered the room again, followed by an older man. Completely white hair, a face marked by time and sun, a still erect posture despite his age. He was dressed with simple elegance. Dark pants, a white shirt, a light jacket. When his eyes met mine, time seemed to stop. Guillermo froze mid-step. His mouth opened in shock. The color drained from his face, as if he'd seen a ghost. "Carmen," he whispered, his voice almost inaudible. I rose slowly, leaning on the cane that had become my constant companion. "Guillermo," I replied simply. He took a hesitant step in my direction. Then another. His eyes, the same dark, intense eyes I remembered, the same eyes that had looked at me through Leonardo's face, scanned my face anxiously, as if seeking confirmation that I was real. "It's not possible," he murmured. You died. The accident." Ramona said. "There was no accident," I explained softly. "Only lies. Lies that separated us for 40 years. Guillermo looked at Leonardo, confusion evident on his face. "I don't understand. How?" Leonardo gestured towards the chairs. "Perhaps we should sit down. It's a long story." Over the next hour, Leonardo and I told Guillermo the whole story. The postpartum depression, the psychiatric hospitalization, Ramona's manipulations, the asylum where I spent 4 decades, the reunion with Leonardo, the tests, the confrontation with Ramona. Guillermo listened silently, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Shock, horror, anger, sadness. 40 years, he finally said, his voice choked. 40 years stolen from us. "There's more," Leonardo said gently. "Something you need to know." He pulled out the envelope with the DNA test results and handed it to Guillermo. "I'm not Eduardo Ortega's son, Mr. Santa Cruz. I'm your son." Guillermo looked at the paper, at Leonardo, at me, his face a mixture of disbelief and hope. "My son?" he whispered. "You are my son?" Leonardo nodded, his own eyes moist. "The DNA test confirms it. I'm your biological son, and my mother's, Carmen." Guillermo covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When he finally found his voice again, it was hoarse with emotion. "I always wondered, I always suspected. The dates matched, and you have my eyes. You always did, but I never dared to hope." He extended his trembling hand to touch Leonardo's face. "My son," he said reverently. "My son." Leonardo held Guillermo's hand against his face, his own tears now flowing freely. "I would like, if you'll allow it, I would like to know you, really, as my father." Guillermo nodded, unable to speak. Then, as if suddenly remembering my presence, he turned to me. "Carmen," he said, extending his other hand towards me. "My Carmen, you're really here." I took his hand, feeling the familiar warmth even after so many decades. "I'm here, Guillermo. I came back for you, for both of you." Sensing the moment called for privacy, Leonardo discreetly stood up. "I'll leave you two alone for a while. I'll be in the garden if you need me." When the door closed behind him, Guillermo and I looked at each other silently for a long moment. There was so much to say, so many stories to share, so much time to reclaim. But at that moment, words seemed inadequate, insufficient. Guillermo moved to the chair beside me, taking my hands in his. "I never married," he said simply. "I never could. After you, after what we had, nothing else seemed enough." "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry for everything, for not being strong enough to run away with you when I had the chance, for choosing the safe path instead of true love." He shook his head, gently squeezing my hands. "You have nothing to apologize for. We were young. The world was different. You did what you thought was right at the time." "And we were punished anyway," I replied bitterly. "Me, with 4 decades in an asylum. You, with a lonely life. Leonardo, growing up among lies. But we're here now," Guillermo said softly. "We found our way back to each other. It's not too late, Carmen. Not for us." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw beyond the marks of time. I saw the same Guillermo, the same kind eyes, the same smile that warmed my heart. A lifetime had passed since our youthful days, but the love we felt for each other had survived, dormant but intact. "It's not too late," I agreed. "We still have time. And we have Leonardo," Guillermo added, his voice brimming with paternal pride. "Our son, an extraordinary man." "Yes," I smiled. "Our son." He leaned in, and with a tenderness that transcended time and age, touched his lips to mine. A soft, gentle kiss, full of promises of a future we had never dared to imagine. When we separated, I saw that he was crying. Silent tears streamed down his wrinkled face. "What's wrong?" I asked, wiping away his tears with trembling fingers. "It's just that I never expected." He took a deep breath, trying to control his emotion. "I spent 40 years imagining what our life together would have been like, dreaming of what I could never have. And now, when I had resigned myself to dying alone with my memories, God gives me this gift. You, our son, a second chance." I rested my forehead against his, our tears mingling. "A second chance," I repeated. "Not for the life we could have had, but for the life we can still have." We remained like that for a long moment, absorbing each other's presence, reconnecting across the lost decades. Finally, Guillermo gently pulled away. "We should call Leonardo back," he said. "Our son deserves to be part of this moment." I nodded, and Guillermo stood up to open the door. Leonardo entered, looking anxiously from one to the other, trying to assess what had happened in his absence. "Is everything all right?" he asked hesitantly. Guillermo went to him, and without words, embraced him. A strong embrace, from father to son, an embrace that contained 40 years of involuntary absence. Leonardo, after a moment of surprise, returned the embrace with equal intensity. "My son," Guillermo said, his voice choked. "My son." "Father," Leonardo replied, the word clearly new on his lips, but spoken with a sense of belonging that transcended time and circumstance. I watched the scene with an overflowing heart. My son and the man I loved, finally together. The family that should have been, that could have been, that finally would be. At that moment, the 4 decades of darkness and emptiness seemed to lessen. They didn't disappear. They would never completely disappear, but they were put into perspective. Despite everything Ramona had done, despite all the suffering and separation, we had found our way back to each other. Love had prevailed over hate, truth over lies. Leonardo extended his hand towards me, inviting me to join the embrace. With tears in my eyes, I stood up and walked into the open arms of the 2 men of my life, united finally, as a family. 6 months had passed since reuniting with Guillermo. 6 months of healing, rebuilding, discoveries, and adjustments. 6 months of a life I never imagined I'd have after so many decades of oblivion. The house Leonardo bought for me, for us, was perfect. Not too large, like the sprawling Hacienda Las Palmas, nor modern and impersonal like Leonardo's mansion. It was spacious and inviting, with a lush garden adapted to my physical needs. Ramps replaced stairs, handrails were installed in the hallways, and the bathroom was equipped with grab bars. Guillermo moved into the house next door, close enough to be together daily, yet with enough space to gradually adjust to this new reality. We had both lived alone for decades, me in the isolation of the nursing home, him on his small farm. We needed time to relearn how to share spaces, routines, lives. Leonardo visited almost daily, sometimes for a quick coffee between appointments, sometimes for long dinners where we shared stories, laughter, and occasionally, tears. He was building a relationship with Guillermo, not just as his biological son, but as 2 adult men learning to know and respect each other. The story of Carmen Ortega's resurrection and the discovery of Leonardo's true father remained private, as per the agreement with Ramona. Only a small circle of trust knew the truth. My doctors, Leonardo's lawyers, a few close friends. To the outside world, I was simply a distant relative Leonardo had reconnected with and decided to care for in her final years. Ramona kept her part of the bargain, transferring half her assets to an account in my name and staying away from our lives. According to Leonardo, she rarely left Hacienda Las Palmas now, preferring isolation to the risk of encountering me or Guillermo around town. Her health, apparently, was deteriorating rapidly, the price of decades of secrets and manipulations finally taking its toll. I felt no pleasure in her suffering, only a sad understanding that she had wasted her life fueling hatred and envy, when she could have known the love and family I now enjoyed. My own health, on the other hand, improved daily. Continued therapy with Dr. Mendez helped integrate my fragmented memories into a coherent narrative. The right medication, not the sedative cocktails from the nursing home, kept my body functioning as well as possible for someone my age. And most importantly, the presence of people who loved me gave my mind and spirit a vitality I hadn't felt in decades. One sunny Sunday afternoon, we were all gathered in my garden. Leonardo and his girlfriend, Sophia, a brilliant doctor he met during my hospital visits, and who quickly became part of the family. Guillermo sitting beside me on the patio, his hand gently holding mine. Elena, no longer just a nurse, but a family friend, helping serve refreshments. Leonardo stood up, champagne flute in hand, and cleared his throat to get our attention. "I have an announcement to make," he said, his face lit up with a radiant smile. "Sophia and we're having a baby." The news was met with exclamations of joy and warm embraces. A baby, a grandchild, a new generation. I looked at Guillermo, seeing my own emotion reflected in his eyes. We would be grandparents. After all we had lost, after so many stolen years, we would have the chance to see our legacy continue. "There's more," Leonardo continued after the initial congratulations. "Sophia and I decided to get married before the baby is born. A simple ceremony, just family, and we want it to be here, in this garden." I looked around at the green flowering space that had become my sanctuary. Yes, it would be perfect. A place of new beginnings, of hope, of reunited family. And, Leonardo hesitated, looking directly at Guillermo, "I'd like to officially ask for your blessing, Dad, and yours too, Mom. Not just for the marriage, but for something else." He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I want to legally change my last name. From Ortega to Santa Cruz Ortega, to honor both my fathers, Eduardo, who raised me for as long as he could, and you, Guillermo, my biological father, and so that my son or daughter will be born, knowing their true history." Guillermo couldn't hold back the tears. He stood up and embraced Leonardo, unable to put into words what that gesture meant. I, too, cried silently, marveling at my son's ability to transform a story of betrayal and loss into one of redemption and honor. Later that night, after everyone had left, Guillermo and I sat on the patio, watching the stars emerge in the night sky, his arm around my shoulders, my head resting against his chest, like teenagers in love, only much older and much wiser. "Did you ever imagine," he asked softly, "when we were hiding behind the trees at the hacienda, that one day we'd be like this, free to be together, with our son, expecting a grandchild?" I shook my head. I never thought it was possible. Our story seemed destined to be one of impossible love, of separation, and yet, here we are. "Do you think we should get married too?" Guillermo asked, a hint of humor in his voice. "Two octogenarians walking down the aisle? It would be a scandal." I laughed, feeling young despite the wrinkles and white hair. "We've lived through enough scandals for one lifetime, don't you think? Besides, I like it how we are now, together because we want to be, not because of papers or social conventions." Guillermo nodded, gently pulling me closer. "You're right, as always. What matters is this moment, being together, finally." We sat in silence for a while, immersed in the peace of the night and in each other's presence. Finally, I voiced the thought that had been circling my mind for the past few months. "Sometimes I wonder if I should forgive Ramona." Guillermo tensed slightly. My sister's name still evoked strong emotions in him. Forgive? After everything she did? Not for her sake, I explained, but for mine, for ours. Holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. Ramona has already lost. She's alone, bitter, sick. She's living with the consequences of her choices. And us? Guillermo asked. Don't we also live with the consequences of her choices? 40 years lost, Carmen. 40 years we'll never get back. Yes, I agreed. But look at what we have now. Leonardo. Sophia. A grandchild on the way. Each other. If Ramona hadn't done what she did, who knows what our lives would have been like? Maybe we wouldn't be together today. Maybe Leonardo would never have been born. Guillermo pondered my words. You were always a better person than me, he said finally. Wiser, more compassionate. If you can find forgiveness in your heart after everything you suffered, who am I to argue? I reached out and touched his cheek gently. It's not about being a better person. It's about choosing how I want to live the time I have left, and I want to live in peace, without the weight of hatred. He took my hand and kissed it. Then I'll find peace too. For you. For us. The following week, I received an unexpected call. Ramona had been hospitalized after a stroke. Her condition was critical. According to the doctors, there wasn't much they could do. Leonardo broke the news cautiously, clearly worried about my reaction. You don't need to see her, he assured me. No one would expect that of you. But I knew what I needed to do. The cycle had to close. Not just for me, but for all of us. I want to visit her, I said firmly. Now before it's too late. Leonardo tried to dissuade me, concerned about the emotional impact such an encounter might have. But I was determined. Some things need to be said, son. Some doors need to be properly closed. Guillermo offered to accompany me, but I gently refused. This is a journey I need to make alone. A final conversation between sisters. The hospital was modern and antiseptic, so different from the nursing home where I spent decades. Ramona was in a private room, hooked up to machines monitoring her vital signs. She looked small and frail in the hospital bed, a far cry from the imposing woman she had been. When I entered the room, her eyes were closed. For a moment, I thought I had arrived too late. Then, as if sensing my presence, she slowly opened her eyes. The recognition was instantaneous. There was no room for denials or lies. Carmen, she whispered, her voice barely a weak breath. You've come to see my end. I approached the bed, observing my sister's face. Even ravaged by illness, I could still see traces of the girl I had known, of the young woman I had envied, of the woman who had betrayed me. I didn't come to celebrate your pain, Ramona, I replied softly. I came to say goodbye. Her eyes, still sharp despite her physical frailty, studied me with suspicion. Why? After everything, why would you care? I sat in the chair beside the bed, feeling the weight of the years and the untold stories between us. Because we're sisters. Because despite everything you did, there was a time when we shared the same house, the same parents, the same laughter. Something flickered across Ramona's face. A shadow of memory, perhaps. Or remorse. I hated you, she admitted, the words coming with difficulty. I hated you for being the favorite, the beautiful one, the one everyone loved. And I never understood your hatred, I replied sincerely. I never realized how deeply you resented me until it was too late. Ramona closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength. Why are you really here, Carmen? To gloat? To show that you survived everything I did? That you have Leonardo? You have Guillermo? You have a family? I'm here to forgive you, I said simply. Her eyes flew open, wide with surprise. Forgive me. Yes, not because you deserve it. Not because what you did can be erased, but because I need to free myself from the weight of hatred to live the rest of my days in peace. Ramona looked at me for a long time, as if trying to figure out if there was some trick, some catch in my words. You were always the saint, she said finally, a trace of her old bitterness in her voice. The perfect Carmen. Maybe that's why I couldn't stand living in your shadow. I was never perfect, Ramona. I made my own mistakes. I betrayed my husband. I was too cowardly to embrace my true love. Those choices had their consequences. A single tear rolled down Ramona's cheek, the first I had seen in decades. You know what's worse than hatred, Carmen? Envy. It's an acid that corrodes the soul from the inside. It destroys any possibility of happiness. She extended a trembling hand, which I took in mine after a moment of hesitation. I could have been happy, Ramona continued, her voice weak. I could have found my own path, my own love. Instead, I dedicated my life to destroying you. And look at me now, dying alone. You're not alone right now, I replied softly. I'm here. Another tear rolled down Ramona's face. Why? Why would you do this for me? After everything? Because in the end, all we have left is love, Ramona. Hatred, envy, bitterness. They consume us and leave us empty. Love is the only thing that remains, the only thing that matters. We sat in silence for a long moment, my hand still holding hers. Finally, Ramona spoke, her voice almost inaudible. Do you forgive me, Carmen? Really? I looked into the eyes of my sister, of the woman who had stolen 40 years of my life, who had separated mother and son, who had caused so much suffering out of pure envy. And I found in my heart the true answer. Yes, Ramona, I forgive you. Something seemed to dissolve in her face. A tension, a hardness she had carried all her life. For a brief moment, I glimpsed the girl she had been, before resentment consumed her. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. I stayed with her until she fell asleep, her hand still in mine. When I left the hospital room, I felt lighter, as if a burden I didn't even know I was carrying had been lifted from my shoulders. Leonardo was waiting for me in the hallway, worry evident on his face. How was it? He asked hesitantly. It was necessary, I replied. For both of us. Ramona passed away 3 days later, in her sleep. It was a peaceful end to a tormented life. I attended the funeral alongside Leonardo and Guillermo, a small gesture of peace, a way to definitively close a painful chapter. Leonardo and Sophia's wedding took place a month later, as planned, in the garden of my house. A sunny day, filled with flowers, music, and laughter. Leonardo, elegant in his dark suit. Sophia, radiant in her simple dress that didn't hide her 4-month baby bump. Guillermo walked Sophia down the makeshift flower aisle to Leonardo, assuming the role his heart had longed for decades. I watched from the front row, my eyes brimming with happiness and gratitude. During the ceremony, when the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, there was a moment of sacred silence. I looked up at the blue sky above us and thought of the lives that had intertwined to bring us to this moment. Eduardo Ortega, who had been Leonardo's official father for a brief period. Ramona, whose envy had altered the course of so many lives. The nursing home staff, who had cared for me in their limited way. Elena, who had brought kindness to my darkest days. And all the nameless strangers who, consciously or unconsciously, had been part of my journey. In his vows, Leonardo added something unplanned. I promise you, Sophia, that our son or daughter will know their true history. All of it. The beautiful and the painful. Because it is from truth that we build the strongest foundations for the future. After the ceremony, as guests mingled around tables scattered throughout the garden, Guillermo approached with 2 glasses of champagne. He handed me one and sat beside me on the bench under the oldest tree in the garden. What are you thinking about? He asked, noticing my distant gaze. About how unpredictable life is, I replied. About how, even after 40 years of darkness, there was still light waiting for me. Guillermo smiled. His eyes, the same eyes that had captivated me in my youth, the same eyes Leonardo had inherited, shining with emotion. You know what I'm thinking? He said, taking a sip of champagne. I think life isn't linear. It's not a straight line from birth to death. It's a circle. We return, in some way, to the places and people who are important to us. I raised my glass in a toast. To circles, then, and to new beginnings. To new beginnings, he agreed, clinking his glass against mine. Across the garden, Leonardo saw us and waved. Beside him, Sophia gently caressed her belly, the future literally growing inside her. We returned the wave, connected by invisible bonds of blood, love, and shared history. 5 months later, on a spring morning, Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Dark hair, large, curious eyes, tiny hands that gripped the finger of anyone who approached. When I held her in my arms for the first time, I felt an emotion that cannot be described with words. This little life, this new generation, carried within it the continuity and redemption of our family history. "What are you going to name her?" I asked, marveling at every perfect detail of the baby. Leonardo and Sophia exchanged a meaningful look. "We want to name her Carmen," Leonardo announced. "Carmen Sofia Santa Cruz Ortega, so that she carries with her the strength and resilience of her grandmother." The tears that streamed down my face were tears of pure joy. A name is more than just letters put together. It's a connection to the past, a bridge to the future, an affirmation of values and hopes. As I held my granddaughter, my namesake, in my arms, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought me to this moment. From the trees of Hacienda Las Palmas to the cold hallways of the nursing home, from the darkness of oblivion to the light of recognition, from absolute loneliness to the embrace of a reunited family. Guillermo, sitting beside me in Leonardo and Sophia's living room, put his arm around my shoulders as we admired our granddaughter together. "She's perfect," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "Yes," I agreed. "Perfect." Little Carmen yawned and snuggled more comfortably in my arms, trusting completely, as only babies can. In her delicate features, I could see traces of all of us. Guillermo's eyes, something of Sophia's smile, Leonardo's determination in her small chin. "You know what I think, Guillermo?" I said, watching the baby's peaceful sleep. "I think the real miracle isn't just having survived everything I went through. It's being here, now, holding the future in my arms." Guillermo kissed my temple gently. "The future and the past," he corrected. "She is both, like all of us." Leonardo, who had gone to make tea, returned to the room and sat on the other side of the sofa. With a glance, he asked if I wanted him to take the baby, but I shook my head. I wasn't tired. I could hold this little miracle for hours. "Mom," Leonardo said softly, "there's something I've been thinking about, something I'd like to do." "What, son?" "I'd like to write our story, the true story of the Ortega and Santa Cruz family, not to publish, necessarily, but to preserve it, so that little Carmen, when she grows up, will know where she came from, will know about the strong woman she was named after." The idea moved me deeply. Our story, with all its pains and joys, mistakes and triumphs, deserved to be told, not to fuel resentment or glorify suffering, but to honor the truth and the resilience of the human spirit. "It's a wonderful idea," I replied, "but I want to help. I want to tell my part of the story in my own words." Leonardo smiled, his eyes shining with approval. "That would be perfect. We'll start whenever you're ready." "Tomorrow," I decided. I don't want to waste any more time. And so, the next day, we began. I, sitting on the patio of my house, with a recorder in front of me and Leonardo as the attentive listener, began to narrate my story. The story of Carmen Ortega, the woman who was erased for 40 years, but who found her way back to the light. "My name is Carmen Ortega," I began, my voice firm despite my age. "And this is the story of how I lost everything, and how, when I least expected it, I found so much more than I ever imagined possible." The words flowed, liberating. Each shared memory was a burden lifted, each revelation, a truth honored. I spoke for hours, days, weeks, about the young woman I was, about my love for Guillermo, about my marriage to Eduardo, about Leonardo's birth, about Ramona's betrayal, about the decades in the nursing home, about the miraculous reunion with my son, about forgiveness and redemption. When I finally finished my account months later, I felt a profound peace. My story, our story, was preserved. Little Carmen would grow up knowing her roots, understanding the sacrifices and miracles that made her existence possible. On a quiet afternoon, while watching my 6-month-old granddaughter playing on the living room rug, Guillermo sat beside me. "What are you thinking about, my Carmen?" he asked, taking my wrinkled hand in his. "I'm thinking about how strange and wonderful fate is," I replied. "How a millionaire man, visiting a nursing home to make a donation, found his mother lost 40 years ago, and how that improbable encounter brought us here, to this perfect moment." Guillermo nodded, his eyes fixed on little Carmen, who was babbling happily at her toys. "You know what I see when I look at her?" he asked. "What?" "I see that love, true love, is never really lost. It can be interrupted, it can be hidden, it can be denied, but it finds its way back to the surface, like an underground river that eventually emerges into the sunlight." I rested my head on his shoulder, feeling the quiet strength that had always drawn me to him. "Like us," I whispered, "always finding our way back to each other." "Like us," he agreed. "Always." Little Carmen looked at us at that moment, as if sensing that we were talking about something important. Her toothless smile lit up the entire room, filling it with the promise of the future. And I, Carmen Ortega, the woman who had lost everything and found so much more, smiled back at my granddaughter, at my legacy, at the living proof that love, in the end, always prevails, even if it takes 40 years to find its way back.